Ready to really get into chess. Today we're going deep on how to win this game.
Yeah.
We've got an amazing wiki book on chess.
Yeah, it's great.
That was put together by a ton of players, so we're going to get a lot of different insights.
Definitely.
So I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
Me too.
So one of the things that makes chess so cool is that it's a total skill game.
Right. Absolute no luck.
Not like poker.
Yeah, poker, there's a little bit of luck involved.
Right.
But chess, every win or loss is a direct result of the decisions you make.
I love that. Like a true mental battle.
A mental battlefield.
So let's cover the basics for anyone who might be new to this battlefield.
Sure.
First up the board, we've got 64 squares, black and white.
Yeah.
And you always want to have a white square on your right.
Okay.
The wiki book had a cool mnemonic for this.
Oh, yeah.
White on the right.
Wait on the right. I love it.
I know, it's so simple, but it really helps when you're setting up the board for the first time.
It really does.
Once you have the board set up, you've got to know how to actually move those pieces.
Right. You got to know the army.
So let's meet the chess army. You've got your pawns. They're like the frontline soldiers.
Yeah.
They can only move forward one square at a time,
Right.
except for their very first move where they can actually move 2 squares.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool option.
It is, but here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
That 2-square pawn move, as cool as it is,
Right.
creates a little bit of a vulnerability.
Okay.
And that is where the rule of en passant comes in.
Yeah.
So if your opponent's pawn uses that double-step move
Right.
to land right beside your pawn, you can actually capture it as it walks by.
Yeah, it's like an ambush.
It's like a pawn ambush.
Yeah.
I love it.
Ambush for being ambitious.
That's right. And then, of course, we've got the king,
The king.
the heart of your army,
Part of the army.
but also the most vulnerable.
Yeah, he can only move one square at a time in any direction.
Yeah.
And the goal of the game is to checkmate the opponent's king.
Right, to trap him with no legal moves.
Right.
But the king is never actually captured, right?
That's right. The game ends the moment it becomes clear that capturing the king is unavoidable.
Ah, so it's like a surrender before the final blow.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, then we have the bishops.
The bishops.
Those elegant pieces confined to diagonal movement.
Yeah.
But here's the catch.
Okay.
Each bishop is stuck on either the light squares or the dark squares based on its starting position.
That's right.
So that can really impact the game.
Absolutely.
Imagine your opponent controls a lot of the squares
Right.
of the color your bishop can't even access.
Yeah, your bishop is much weaker.
So it's not just about the bishop's power, but how well it can navigate the board based on all the other pieces.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes for all the pieces.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about rooks.
Oh, the rooks. Yeah, the heavy artillery.
Yeah, those are powerful.
Yeah.
They control the ranks and files moving horizontally or vertically,
As far as they want.
as far as they want.
Yeah, and they're especially powerful on open files.
Oh, what does that mean?
So that means there are no pawns obstructing the path of the rook.
Ah, like a highway with no traffic.
Exactly. It can just zoom across the board.
So you can put a lot of pressure on your opponent's pieces.
Absolutely.
And of course, potentially the king.
Right.
Okay, let's not forget about the queen.
Ah, the queen.
The most powerful piece on the board.
Yes.
I mean, she combines the movement of both the rook and the bishop.
She does.
She's a true force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, she's very versatile.
Yeah.
And she's very dangerous, but you have to use her wisely.
Right, like don't expose her too early.
Right, because then she could become vulnerable to attack.
Makes sense. And then, of course, we have the knights.
The knights.
Those tricky pieces with their L-shaped moves.
Yeah.
You're the only ones that can jump over other pieces.
Yeah.
Which makes them the masters of surprise attacks.
Yeah, they're great for forking.
Oh, yeah, forking.
So they can attack 2 enemy pieces simultaneously.
So the knight is like a ninja warrior,
Yeah, like a ninja.
appearing out of nowhere and wreaking havoc.
Yeah.
I like it.
And especially if you fork with check,
Oh, with check.
then the king has to move.
Right.
And you can take the other piece.
Oh, that's got to be satisfying.
Yeah, don't underestimate the power of the knight.
Right.
They could totally change the course of the game.
Very cool. Now, how do we set up all these pieces on the board?
Yeah, it can be a little overwhelming for beginners,
It can be.
but the wiki book actually has some helpful mnemonics.
Oh, that's cool.
So like knights live in castles.
Oh, I like that one.
So that reminds you that you place the knights next to the rooks
Right.
in the corners.
Because rooks look like castles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Queens on their color.
So the white queen on the white square,
Right.
black queen on the black square. These little mnemonics make setting up the board so much easier.
So much easier.
Now, once the pieces are all set up, there's a special move called castling.
Right.
And this is where the king and one of the rooks basically swap places.
Yeah, they do a little switcheroo.
So you're tucking the king away to a safer spot.
Yeah, it's a good defensive maneuver,
Yeah.
but there are some rules about when you can and can't castle.
What are they?
So neither the king nor the rook involved can have moved previously,
Okay.
and there can't be any pieces between them.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, the wiki book is very clear that chess is not just about moving pieces randomly.
Oh, no.
There's strategy planning, thinking ahead.
Yeah,
It calls tactics the poetry of chess.
I like that.
So tactics. Tell me more about these.
So tactics are those clever maneuvers where you're trying to outwit your opponent,
Oh, okay.
gain material,
Yeah.
or even deliver checkmate.
Nice.
One of the most fundamental tactics is guarding.
Guardia.
Yeah, so one of your pieces is protecting another.
Like a bodyguard.
Yeah.
For your most valuable pieces.
Exact.
I like that. And then you've got batteries.
Batteries.
Two or more of your pieces working together to create a powerful attack.
Yeah, like the classic example is doubling your rooks on a file.
Okay.
It's very powerful.
So you're coordinating your artillery
Yeah.
like a concentrated barrage.
Yes, exactly.
Now, what about the exchange?
Oh, the exchange.
When you trade one of your pieces for one of your opponent's pieces.
Yes.
But it's not as simple as it sounds, right?
It's not just about capturing pieces willy-nilly.
No, you got to understand when it's beneficial and when it's not.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, it might hurt you.
Right. The Wiki book actually gives a great example.
Okay.
There's a position where white sacrifices their knight to capture one of black's pawns.
Yeah.
But by capturing that pawn, white doubled black's pawns
Oh, I see.
on a single file, which weakens black's position overall.
So it's like setting a trap,
Yeah.
like creating this hidden weakness to exploit later in the game.
That's the kind of strategic thinking that good players do.
I love that. Okay, now we can't forget about the fork.
Yeah, the fork.
That classic knight maneuver where you attack two enemy pieces at the same time.
Right.
And your opponent has to make a tough choice.
That's a tough choice.
And of course, we can't forget the fork with check.
Oh, the fork with check.
I mean, this forces the king to move,
Yeah.
and that other forked piece is vulnerable to capture.
Yeah.
And then there's the legendary royal fork,
The royal fork, yes.
where you trap both the king and queen
The king and queen.
simultaneously.
Yeah.
Oh, the chaos.
Yes.
Now let's talk about pins and skewers.
Okay.
These are like forcing your opponent to choose between saving a pawn or losing their queen.
Yeah, it's a tough choice.
It is.
So with a pin, your piece is attacking an enemy piece.
Yeah.
That is blocking a more valuable piece behind it.
Okay.
So the pinned piece can't move without exposing the more valuable piece to capture.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then a skewer is like a reverse pin, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you attack a valuable enemy piece that's in front of a less valuable one,
Right.
forcing it to move and leave the weaker piece undefended.
Yeah.
So pins and skewers can be so powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
You can gain a lot of material that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Now we've got to talk about the discovery. This is like next level chess brilliance.
Yeah.
It's when you move one of your pieces to unleash a surprise attack on an enemy piece.
Right.
It's like you're pulling back a curtain to reveal a hidden weapon.
Yeah.
Except in this case, the weapon is your attacking piece,
Right.
suddenly threatening a vulnerable enemy piece.
Absolutely.
And when you combine that with check,
Oh, man. Lethal.
lethal, yeah.
Now, one of the Wikibook's most captivating examples of tactical genius is the smothered mate.
Yeah.
So what is so special about this checkmate?
So this is a rare checkmate
Okay.
where the king is trapped by his own pieces.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, suffocated by his loyal defenders.
And it often involves sacrificing your queen
Oh my goodness.
to lure the enemy king into a seemingly safe square.
Yeah.
That turns out to be a deadly cage.
I remember seeing this. There's a famous game where this happened, and black sacrificed their queen, forcing the white king into a corner,
Yeah.
surrounded by his own pieces,
Yeah.
helpless.
Yeah, it was a stunning victory.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
And it just showcased that power of calculated sacrifice.
Right.
And this unexpected beauty of a seemingly hopeless position.
Yeah, sometimes you got to give up material
Right.
to get a better position.
So it's not always about holding on to every piece.
No, not at all.
It's about seeing the bigger picture
Yeah,
and understanding when a sacrifice can lead to a better position or even a forced checkmate.
right.
Now we got to talk about the Zwischenzug.
Oh, Zwischenzug.
It's German for in-between move.
Yeah, it's a great word.
I love that.
Zwischenzug.
Okay, so what does it mean?
So a Zwischenzug is a move that disrupts a forced sequence of moves.
Okay.
So your opponent's focused on what they think is going to happen,
Right.
and you throw in this surprise.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Like you break free from the pattern.
Yeah, it's a surprise attack.
So you catch them off guard.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
The wiki book actually shares a great example.
Oh, really?
Yeah, from a game between Borsenkov and Mezinev.
Okay.
Black is facing what seems like a forced sequence of moves,
Yeah.
and then bam,
Yeah.
makes an unexpected bishop move.
Okay.
A Zwischenzug,
Nice.
and white ends up resigning.
Oh, wow. So it's a reminder that chess is not just about calculating all these long sequences,
Right.
but it's also about being flexible,
Yeah,
being adaptable,
absolutely.
being able to adjust on the fly and seize those unexpected opportunities.
Yeah, chess is a dynamic game.
I love it.
Yeah,
So we've covered so much already,
we have.
from basic movement of the pieces
Nope.
to these incredible, mind-boggling tactical concepts.
Yeah.
I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface of this game.
Oh, we are.
There's so much more to explore.
Yeah, now that we've explored the battlefield,
Yeah.
learned about the individual pieces and the warriors,
Yeah.
and witnessed some of those tactical skirmishes,
Yeah.
we need to step back
Okay.
and look at the bigger picture.
Yep. The strategy.
Yes.
So we're moving from the battlefield to the war room.
Exactly.
Let's dive into those strategic depths and see what we can discover.
Sounds good.
Okay. So we are in the strategic command center.
All right.
We've got the battlefield mapped out. Our pieces are ready for action.
Okay.
Now it's time to talk strategy.
Yeah, I love it. The wiki book dives into some key strategic concepts
Okay, great.
that can really elevate your game.
Okay, I'm excited.
So first up is material. Understanding the relative value of each piece.
So like in a video game, each piece has its own power level?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So pawns are worth 1 point.
Okay.
Knights and bishops, 3 points each.
Okay,
Rooks are worth 5.
got it.
And the queen, the most powerful piece on the board, is worth 9.
9.
Yes. And of course, the king is priceless.
Right.
Because if you lose your king, you lose the game.
So if I trade my knight for my opponent's rooks, I'm up 2 points, right? Sounds like a good deal.
It often is,
Yeah.
but the wiki book stresses that context matters.
Oh, context matters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Piece values aren't always fixed.
Okay.
They can fluctuate depending on the stage of the game and the position on the board.
So it's not just like collecting points in some kind of chess arcade game.
No,
You really have to understand the nuances of how the value of a piece can change depending on the situation.
exactly. So for example, knights and bishops, they have the same basic point value,
Mm-hmm.
but they have different strengths.
Okay.
So in open games with lots of space,
Yeah.
bishops tend to be more powerful.
Okay. Because they have that long diagonal reach.
Right. They can cover a lot of ground.
It's like having a clear line of sight across the battlefield
Yeah.
versus a knight who's kind of stuck with those more restricted movement.
Yeah. But in closed games,
Yeah.
with lots of locked pawns,
Mm-hmm.
knights can be more effective.
Because they can hop over all those obstacles.
Yes, exactly.
So a knight might be worth more than a bishop in a closed position.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how complex this is.
Right. And then there are pawns.
Okay, pawns, yeah.
Their value can change dramatically throughout the game.
Oh, wow.
So early on, they might be worth their 1 point.
Okay.
But as they get closer to the other side of the board, their potential to promote into a queen
Oh, yeah.
makes them incredibly valuable.
They're climbing the ranks
Yeah, exactly.
just by moving forward.
Yeah.
And once they reach the other side, they can transform into the most powerful piece on the board.
Yeah, they can become a queen.
Incredible.
So a pawn on the 7th rank
yeah.
is far more valuable than a pawn on the 2nd rank.
I see.
And you have to think about passed pawns.
Oh, past pawns. Okay.
These are pawns with no enemy pawns in front of them.
Okay.
So they have a clear path to promotion.
I see.
And they can be very dangerous, especially if they're protected.
Right.
Yeah.
So pawns are much more than just cannon fodder.
Yes, they are.
You really have to manage them carefully,
Yeah.
understanding how their value changes.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that a lot. So now another crucial element is tempo.
tempo.
which is basically the efficiency of your moves, right?
Yeah, making sure every move you make serves a purpose.
So it's not just what you do, it's how quickly you do it.
Yeah, and wasting moves means you're losing tempo.
Right.
Yeah, and the Wikibook even suggests
Okay.
that 3 tempeists are roughly equivalent to the value of a pawn.
Wow. So if I can develop my pieces faster than my opponent,
Right.
I'm gaining a material advantage without capturing anything.
That's right.
That's cool.
Yeah. And tempo allows you to seize the initiative.
Yeah.
You're forcing your opponent to react to you.
Right, rather than them dictating the flow of the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the most famous games in chess history,
Okay.
the Immortal Game.
Ah, the Immortal Game.
Yeah, between Adolf Anderssen and Lionel Kieseritzky,
Okay.
is a perfect example of how tempo can be the deciding factor.
I've heard of that game. It's known for its brilliant sacrifices and unexpected twists.
Yes, it is.
I'm guessing tempo played a key role.
Yeah, Anderson gained such a significant tempo advantage
Okay.
that Kieseritzky was constantly on the defensive.
Yeah.
Just scrambling to react to Anderson's moves.
Okay.
And it led to a spectacular checkmate.
Right.
It really shows the power of tempo and initiative.
Because it's like a snowball effect.
Yeah.
The more tempo you have, the more pressure you put on your opponent.
Right.
And the harder it becomes for them to recover.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's move on to pawn structure.
Okay, pawn structure.
This is the foundation of any good chess strategy.
Ah, okay.
It refers to the arrangement of pawns on the board
Okay.
and how they create weaknesses or strengths for both sides.
So we're not just thinking about individual pawns anymore, but how they work together as a team
Exactly.
to control the board.
Yeah, it's like building a wall or a launching pad for an attack.
I like that analogy.
Yeah. So the Wikibook walks through some key elements of pawn structure, like open files and diagonals,
Oh, yeah, okay.
which are essential for understanding piece activity.
So open file means there are no pawns blocking the path of a rook.
That's right.
So that gives the rook a lot of freedom to move and attack.
Yeah.
Okay.
And open diagonals do the same thing for bishops.
Right.
Then you've got pawn islands.
Pawn islands.
Yeah.
What are those?
So those are groups of pawns that are isolated from the rest.
Okay.
Too many pawn islands can weaken your position.
Ah, I see.
It
that.
makes it easier for your opponent to break through.
So it's like your forces are divided.
Yeah.
Spread out,
Yeah.
more vulnerable to a concentrated attack.
Yeah. And then there are different types of pawn weaknesses
Oh, okay.
you want to avoid,
Okay.
like doubled pawn,
Doubled pawns. Okay.
which occur when one of your pawns captures an enemy piece and ends up on the same file as another pawn.
So they're stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
Which limits their movement.
Yes.
Okay.
So doubled pawns are often considered weaknesses,
Okay.
but they can sometimes have advantages,
Okay.
like creating open files
Huh?
or blocking an enemy piece.
So chess is full of those little nuances.
Yeah.
Where something that seems like a weakness in one situation could be an advantage in another.
Absolutely.
So it's all about understanding those complexities.
Yeah. And then you have backward pawns.
Oh, backward pawns.
These are pawns that are lagging behind,
Okay.
vulnerable to attack.
Right.
And of course, we can't forget about pass pawns.
Yeah. Pass pawns are dangerous.
Yeah.
They have a clear path to promotion.
Yeah.
So managing your pawn structure, it's like this delicate balancing act.
Yeah, you're trying to create strong chains
Uh-huh.
while avoiding those weaknesses
Right.
that your opponent can exploit.
Got it.
And then there's active versus passive pieces.
Okay. Active versus passive.
Yeah, this is crucial for understanding piece placement
Okay.
and potential threats.
So an active piece is one that is well positioned, ready to make threats.
Yeah.
And a passive piece is stuck defending or has very limited mobility.
A good way to think about it.
Yeah.
So the Wikibook really encourages players to strive for active pieces,
Right.
pieces that are contributing to the attack
Yeah.
and forcing your opponent to react.
Okay.
And a classic example of this is the good versus bad bishop dilemma.
Hey, bishop can be bad. I thought they were strong pieces.
Well, the bishop's strength depends on the pawn structure.
Okay.
If a bishop's movement is restricted by pawns,
Yeah, okay.
especially its own pawns,
Right.
it becomes a bad bishop,
Okay.
kind of stuck on one side of the board. Limited influence.
It's like having a powerful archer stuck behind a wall
Yes.
of his own soldiers,
Yeah.
unable to fire his arrows.
That's a great analogy.
I try.
Yeah. So if your pawns are blocking your bishop,
Yeah.
you're weakening one of your strongest pieces.
Oh, I see.
The Wikibook even suggests that if you find yourself with a bad bishop,
Yeah.
you should try to exchange it for a knight.
Yeah, okay.
just to free up your position.
It's like sacrificing a wounded soldier
Yeah,
to improve the overall effectiveness of your army.
right.
Okay, I like that.
Now, there are a few more strategic concepts we need to talk about
Okay.
before we move on to checkmates.
Okay.
One is overloaded pieces.
Overloaded pieces. What does that mean?
So that's a piece that is trying to defend too many other pieces simultaneously.
Okay.
And if one of those defended pieces is captured,
Yeah.
the overloaded piece is suddenly stretched too thin,
Right.
so other pieces become vulnerable.
It's like trying to juggle too many balls at once. Yeah.
Exactly.
And eventually you drop one.
Yes. That's why it's important to spread out your defensive responsibilities.
Makes sense.
And then there's the concept of initiative.
Oh, yeah, initiative. We touched on that earlier with tempo.
Yes.
So having the initiative means you're the aggressor. You're forcing your opponent to react to you.
Exactly.
Rather than the other way around.
Right. And the Wikibook emphasizes how important it is to strive for the initiative
Okay.
whenever possible.
Yeah, okay.
Because it gives you a psychological advantage.
Makes sense.
And it makes it harder for your opponent to formulate their own plans.
Right.
A great example of this
Yeah.
is the game between Garry Kasparov and Anatoly Karpov in 1985.
Okay.
Kasparov, playing white, launched all these aggressive attacks early in the game,
Okay.
seized the initiative, and never let go.
Nice.
And Karpov was constantly on the defensive.
Yeah.
And he eventually blundered, and Kasparov won
Okay.
and became the youngest world chess champion in history.
Wow. So initiative can really have a profound impact
Yes, it can.
on the game.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you're down material, but you have certain positional advantages
Yeah.
that might compensate for that disadvantage.
Right. The Wikibook calls that compensation.
Compensation.
Yeah. Okay.
So even if you've lost a piece or two,
Yeah.
you might still have a chance to win
Okay.
if you have other advantages, like a superior pawn structure
Yeah.
or a more active king.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So even in a seemingly disadvantaged position, there's always hope
Great.
if you can find those hidden strengths.
Yeah, and exploit your opponent's weaknesses.
Okay. I like that a lot.
And then there's Zugzwang.
Zugzwang. That's a tough one.
It's a German word
Okay.
that describes a situation where any move a player makes
Yeah.
will actually weaken their position.
Oh, so they're forced to move.
Yeah.
But every move is bad.
Every move leads to a worse outcome. It's like being caught in a trap where the only way out is to walk further into it.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy.
I like that.
The Wikibook gives a classic example
Okay.
in a king and pawn endgame.
Okay.
So the player with the pawn
Yeah.
is forced to make a move that allows the opposing king to block the pawn's promotion.
Oh, so they can't win.
Right.
It's incredible how even in those simple endgames, there can be these like hidden complexities,
Yeah.
these counterintuitive situations. It
Yeah.
really makes you realize how deep this game is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the final chapter of our strategic exploration. Checkmates.
Checkmate.
So we've learned about the pieces,
Right.
their movements,
Yeah.
the tactical nuances, the overarching strategic principles that guide the game.
Yeah.
Now it's time to learn how to deliver those final decisive blows.
I'm ready. Let's learn how to checkmate.
All right, so it's the ultimate goal,
It is?
the decisive moment.
Yeah.
It brings the game to a satisfying conclusion.
Right.
And what's fascinating about checkmate is that it's not just about brute force.
So it's not like just overwhelming the king with your army.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Checkmating often requires precision timing,
Yeah.
even a touch of elegance.
Oh, elegance. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's about weaving this web of threats,
Right.
forcing the king into a position
Yeah.
where there's no escape.
No escape.
It's like setting a trap, luring him into a seemingly safe spot.
Yeah.
That turns out to be a deadly cage.
That's a great way to put it.
I like that.
And the Wikibook really emphasizes mastering basic checkmates,
Okay.
especially for those endgame scenarios
Yeah.
where you have a material advantage
Uh-huh.
and you need to deliver the final blow.
So it's like having a winning hand in poker,
Yeah,
but not knowing how to play it correctly.
exactly. You need to know how to finish the game strong.
Right, exactly.
So let's start with one of the most fundamental checkmates.
Okay.
King and queen versus king.
All right, so I've managed to capture all my opponent's pieces except for their lone king, and I have my queen.
Yeah.
How do I checkmate?
So the key here is to use your queen to drive the enemy king to the edge of the board,
Okay, to the edge.
essentially trapping him.
Okay.
The queen, with her long reach, can do this quite effectively.
Yeah.
But it's even faster if you coordinate with your king
Oh, okay.
to help shrink the king's space.
So it's like a game of chessboard tag,
Yeah.
using my queen to herd the enemy king
Right.
to the edge where he has nowhere to go.
That's a great analogy.
I try.
Yeah, and remember, you don't need to check the king constantly during this process.
Oh, okay.
Unnecessary checks can actually give the enemy king more room to maneuver.
I see.
So it's about slowly suffocating the king's space,
Yeah.
patiently pushing him towards his doom.
Right. And the Wikibook mentions a common mistake
Oh, yeah.
players make in this endgame,
Yeah.
trying to checkmate too quickly.
Yes.
So if you rush the checkmate and accidentally block the king's legal moves
Right.
while he's not in check,
Yeah.
the game ends in a stalemate.
Stalemate.
A stalemate.
Yeah.
That's like winning a marathon.
Yeah.
And then getting disqualified for stepping outside the lines.
Exactly.
Frustrated.
Especially when you had a clear advantage.
Right.
So yeah, patience and precision are key in this checkmate.
Okay. So now what about king and rook versus king?
Okay.
That seems trickier since the rook's movement is more limited.
Yeah, it does require a bit more coordination between the king and the rook.
Okay.
The most common technique is to use the rook protected by your king to create a shrinking box
Okay.
around the enemy king.
So it's like I'm building a wall
Yeah.
around the enemy king, gradually closing in
Exactly.
until he's trapped.
No room left to escape.
Now, the Wikibook provides a clear example of this,
It does.
showing how white systematically constricts black's king,
Right.
slowly but surely,
Yeah.
pushing him towards his inevitable demise.
Towards checkmate.
I like it. So it's a methodical process,
It is.
but it really highlights the power of the rook in the endgame.
Yes, it does.
Yeah?
Now, while checkmates with minor pieces, bishops and knights,
Mm-hmm.
are less common,
Yeah.
the Wikibook does cover them
Okay.
for those rare situations where they might occur.
So you can checkmate with just a king and a bishop,
Well,
or a king and a knight.
unfortunately, no. If you only have one minor piece
Okay.
and the enemy only has their king,
Yeah.
a checkmate is impossible.
Oh, okay.
However, if you have two bishops,
Yeah.
it becomes much easier
Okay.
because two bishops can control a lot of squares,
Right.
especially if they're on opposite colored squares.
Yeah, they can coordinate to cut off the king,
Exactly.
force him into a corner where he's checkmated.
Yes.
Now, the book gives an example where the two bishops, working in perfect harmony, deliver checkmate in just 6 moves.
It's a beautiful checkmate.
It is. It's like the synchronized dance of destruction.
Yeah.
All right, so what about checkmating with a bishop and a knight?
So that is trickier,
Okay.
but it's definitely possible.
Okay.
The key is to force the enemy king into the corner square that's the same color as your bishop.
That makes sense because your knight can control the squares around that corner,
Yeah.
preventing the king from escaping.
Right.
And then the bishop delivers the final blow.
Exactly. And what about two knights?
2 knights. Ooh. I feel like this is a trick question.
You're right to be suspicious.
Okay.
So the two knights endgame is a classic example of how material advantage doesn't always guarantee victory.
Okay.
You can't force a checkmate
Really?
with just two knights and a king,
Okay.
unless your opponent makes a significant blunder.
So even if I have the enemy king trapped in a corner with my 2 knights,
Yeah.
I can't actually checkmate him.
It highlights a fascinating aspect of chess.
Yeah.
It's not always about brute force.
Yeah.
Sometimes even with more pieces, you just don't have the power
Right.
to deliver the final blow.
So there's always something to learn,
Yeah.
even in those simple endgames.
Yeah, those seemingly simple endgames.
Right.
Yeah.
Can be full of surprises and challenges.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into chess.
Yes.
The Wikibook leaves us with this very thought-provoking question.
Okay.
Now that you know the pieces, the tactics, and the strategic ideas, what kind of player will you be?
Yeah.
It's a challenge to apply all that we've learned,
Yeah.
to find our own chess personality.
Yeah. To carve our own path in this complex and fascinating game.
Exactly. So will you be an aggressive attacker relentlessly pursuing the enemy king,
Yeah.
or a cunning defender patiently building an impenetrable fortress,
Right.
or maybe a master of the endgame,
Yeah.
calmly navigating those intricate scenarios to secure victory?
Yeah, I love that.
I mean, the beauty of chess is that it offers a path for every kind of mind,
Yeah.
a canvas for creativity and calculation.
It's a challenge that can last a lifetime.
It is. So we encourage you to explore this world.
Yeah.
Put your newfound knowledge to the test
Right.
and just discover the endless possibilities within those 64 squares.
And remember, the journey to chess mastery is paved with victories and defeats.
Yeah.
So embrace the challenges, learn from your mistakes, and never stop seeking improvement.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of chess. Until next time, keep your mind sharp, your strategies evolving, and may your games be filled with brilliant moves and satisfying checkmates.
Yes.
Welcome back, chess masters in the making. We've gone through the fundamentals, the tactical battlefield, and we've explored the strategic depths of chess. Now it's time for the grand finale, checkmate.
Yeah. It's the ultimate goal.
It is.
It's the decisive moment
Yeah,
that brings the game to a satisfying conclusion.
for sure.
And what's fascinating about checkmate
Yeah.
is that it's not just about brute force.
So it's not about just like overwhelming the king with a massive army.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Checkmating often requires precision timing, even a touch of elegance.
Elegance, I like that.
Yeah. It's about weaving a web of threats,
Okay.
forcing the enemy king into a position where there's
Sure.
absolutely no escape.
So it's like setting a trap, luring the king into a seemingly safe spot
Yeah,
that turns out to be a deadly cage.
that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the Wikibook emphasizes the importance of mastering basic checkmates,
Okay.
especially for those endgame scenarios where you have a material advantage
Right.
and you need to deliver that final blow.
So it's like having a winning hand in poker,
Yeah,
but not knowing how to actually play it correctly.
exactly. You need to know how to finish the game strong.
Right, exactly. So let's start with one of the most fundamental checkmates, king and queen versus king.
Okay.
So I've managed to capture all my opponent's pieces except their lone king, and I've got my queen.
All right.
How do I deliver the checkmate?
Okay, so the key here is to use your queen to drive the enemy king to the edge of the board,
To the edge. Okay.
essentially trapping him. The queen with her long reach can do this quite effectively,
Okay.
but it's even faster if you can coordinate with your king
Okay.
to help shrink the king's space.
So it's like a game of chessboard tag.
Yeah.
Using my queen to herd the enemy king towards the edge where there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And remember, you don't need to check the king constantly during this process.
Okay.
Unnecessary checks can sometimes give the enemy king more room to maneuver.
Oh, I see.
So it's about slowly suffocating the king's space,
Mm.
patiently pushing him towards his doom.
And the Wikibook mentions a common mistake players make in this endgame,
Yeah.
trying to checkmate too quickly.
Yes.
So if you rush the checkmate
Yeah.
and accidentally block all the king's legal moves
Right.
while he's not in check,
Yeah.
the game ends in a stalemate.
Stalemate.
Stalemate. That's like winning a marathon and then getting disqualified for stepping outside the lines.
Exactly. It's
Yes,
frustrating.
it is.
especially when you had a clear advantage. So patience and precision are essential in this checkmate.
Absolutely. Okay, so now what about king and rook versus king?
Okay.
That seems a little trickier because the rook's movement is more limited.
It does require a bit more coordination between the king and the rook.
Okay.
The most common technique is to use the rook protected by your king to create a shrinking box
Okay.
around the enemy king.
So I'm building a wall around the enemy king, slowly closing in.
Exactly. The rook acts as the wall, and your king prevents the enemy king from slipping past.
I see.
Yeah, the Wikibook provides a clear example showing how white systematically constricts black's king, slowly but surely pushing him towards his inevitable demise.
I mean, it's a methodical process,
It is.
but it really highlights the power of the rook in the endgame.
It does.
Mm.
Now, while checkmates with minor pieces, bishops, and knights are less common,
Yeah.
the Wikibook does cover them for those rare situations where they might occur.
So can you checkmate with just a king and a bishop or a king and a knight?
Unfortunately, no. If you only have one minor piece
Okay.
and the enemy only has their king,
Yeah.
checkmate is impossible.
Oh, okay.
However, if you have two bishops,
Yeah.
it becomes much easier.
Okay.
Two bishops can control a lot of squares,
Right.
especially if they're on opposite colored squares.
Right. And they can coordinate their movements to cut off the king, force him into a corner where he's inevitably checkmated.
Exactly. The book is a really good example. Two bishops working in perfect harmony deliver checkmate in just 6 moves.
Oh, wow. It's beautiful how they work together,
It is.
like a synchronized dance of destruction.
Yeah.
All right, so what about checkmating with a bishop and a knight?
That is trickier,
Okay.
but it's definitely possible. The key is to force the enemy king into the corner square that's the same color as your bishop.
That makes sense. So the knight can help control the squares around that corner,
Yeah.
preventing the king from escaping, and then the bishop delivers that final blow.
Exactly. And what about two knights?
2 knights. Oh, I have a feeling this is a trick question.
You're right to be suspicious.
Okay.
The two knights endgame is a classic example of how material advantage doesn't always guarantee victory.
Okay.
With just 2 knights and a king, you can't actually force a checkmate
Oh, really?
unless your opponent makes a significant blunder.
Wow. So even if I had the enemy king trapped in a corner,
Yeah.
with my 2 knights, I can't actually deliver a checkmate.
It highlights a fascinating aspect of chess.
Right.
It's not always about brute force.
Right.
Sometimes even with more pieces, you just don't have the power to deliver the final blow.
It makes you realize that there's always something new to learn in chess. Even those seemingly simple endgames can be full of surprises and challenges. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of chess.
It does.
And the Wikibook leaves us with this really thought-provoking question.
Okay.
Now that you know the pieces, the tactics, and the strategic ideas, what kind of player will you be? It's a challenge to apply all that we've learned to find our own chess personality,
Yeah.
to carve our own path in this complex and fascinating game.
I love that.
So will you be an aggressive attacker relentlessly pursuing the enemy king from the opening? Or a cunning defender patiently building an impenetrable fortress? Or maybe a master of the endgame calmly navigating those intricate scenarios to secure victory?
So cool.
The beauty of chess is that it offers a path for every kind of mind.
Yeah.
It's a canvas for creativity and calculation.
Right.
It's a challenge that can truly last a lifetime.
Yeah.
So we encourage you to explore this world, put your newfound knowledge to the test, and just discover the endless possibilities within those 64 squares.
Yeah. And remember, the journey to chess mastery is paved with both victories and defeats. So embrace the challenges, learn from your mistakes, and never stop seeking improvement.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of chess. Until next time, keep your mind sharp, your strategies evolving, and may your games be filled with brilliant moves and satisfying checkmates.
Yes.